Hello, hello. Welcome to a day in a life. The other day I was on a Zoom with some friends because we were doing a trivia night, and someone questioned that I have peanut butter and Cheez-Its right next to each other. And I just want everyone here to rest assured that I do not eat Cheez-Its with peanut butter. They are just two different snacks who happen to live next door to each other. Cheez-Its are eaten on their own. The peanut butter is eaten with apples. They do not cross. There is no crossover in the land of Cheez-Its and peanut butter, in case you were worried, which I fully support. Excuse me. I have good personal news for you. I painted my nails and I painted my toenails. I actually kind of like the color I painted my toenails better. Come for the feet. We're all here for the feet pics. Bet you didn't know you were gonna get that today. So there's. It's such a fun color, isn't it? I should have done. I was like, ooh, I want pink nails, and I do like this, but it's a really like clotted nail polish. If you like, it's old, so it's like when I get it out of the bottle, it's kind of clumpy. So it's, and this one is so smooth. So this is actually, this whole series has just been a podcast and a, what is it? This show, a promotion? What is it? A call out? No, not a beauty vlog. It's like, what is the thing that Instagram influencers get paid to do? It's a ad? Okay, I feel like there's a word that's escaping me. But anyways, it's just an ad for I'm being paid to promote. A paid promotion? Maybe that's it. Nicole by Opie, the color I see you and I raise you, but C is spelled S-E-A. So keep that in mind next time you hit up your local CVS. This is also a paid promotion by CVS. I think there's some good news and some bad news today in the world that I literally just read about in the past 15 minutes, so don't quote me. But it looks like the Dakota Access Pipeline got shut down by courts, which is really good news. But the bad news is it looks like ICE is back on their bullshit and said that students who are on a visa here and don't have and aren't enrolled and don't have in-person classes have to leave the country, which is just like mind-boggling levels of stupidity and like asshole behavior, which is like just like ICE's MO. But anyways, a lot of my friends are now in danger of having to leave the country because our film school doesn't have any in-person classes right now. So a bunch of them are calling the dean, who's literally just got the deanship. He like got the deanship right at the beginning, of the pandemic, and then like has been like dealing with like the protest and trying to like rechange the school to like reflect its actual reflect the needs of like Black students. So I think he's probably just regretting the day that he was born, because the students have just been mad at him since day one, and he just like inherited this bad situation, and now he's just like, oh my god. So Steve Anderson needs to do something about this, and he's just like got tossed in at the worst possible moment. He had no time to be like, I can adapt to this. No adaptation, Steve, only progress. Okay, so speaking of no adaptations, there have been no good film adaptations of Wuthering Heights. So what happened yesterday? Yesterday, everybody was really, really mad. And I'm really hoping that people are less mad today because that was exhausting to read. Nellie runs into Hareton Shrek is not a Wuthering Heights adaptation. We've had this talk. Where was I? I got so distracted by Shrek. I've been completely... The swamp will absorb you, so yes, you will die. You won't die on the swamp, but you will die in the swamp. What happened? So Nellie runs into Hareton. Hareton's like, I don't know who you are. And Nellie's like, and he throws a rock at Nellie. So Nellie goes to see Heathcliff at Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff comes out the door. Nellie is like, nope, and she runs away for no good reason. And then, okay, this is what I remember. So Heathcliff comes to the Grange, and Nellie is hiding in the kitchen. She's like, he's here. So she's hiding in the kitchen, looking out. Isabella is like, I don't know, throwing rocks in the courtyard or something. Heathcliff comes out, they talk, it's like something weird happens. Then Heathcliff kisses her. Nellie's like, no, you can't do that. So Isabella runs off. Kathy comes down and is like, what's happening? And Nellie's like, he's making out with Isabella without consent. But that's not really what she says. It's just what we want her to say. Kathy's like, I don't know, whatever. And then she and Heathcliff get into a fight that's basically like, Heathcliff's like, I can do what I want. And Kathy's like, you can't do what you want. You can only do what I say. And they get into a huge fight. And then Nellie's like, I gotta do something about this. So she toots her way up to Edgar. She's like, Edgar, they're fighting in the kitchen. Heathcliff made out with Isabella and Kathy's not happy. And Edgar's like, Heathcliff made out with Isabella? It seems like I'm going to react to this badly, which he should. So Edgar goes running down. He's like, Nellie, go get two guys from we're going to kick Heathcliff out. So Edgar runs down the stairs and he starts yelling at Heathcliff. And then eventually, Heathcliff's like, really, Kathy? You chose this guy over me? And then Edgar sits down in a chair and starts crying. And then it's just a mess. Edgar tries to beat up Heathcliff, but I think Heathcliff I don't know. I think Heathcliff won the fight. Essentially, Edgar runs out of the house. Is like, you're never allowed back into this house. And Kathy is, of course, like, no, not my emotional affair. And Isabella, I don't think she's even involved. She's off, in a corner, getting over the fact that a man just kissed her without consent. I have a little shake today. It's quite delicious. That's my emotional support, Heathcliff. Isabella's over in a corner. Edgar runs out of the house and is like, get me out of my house! And I don't know why that was a Cookie Monster impression. The three men come and Heathcliff leaves. And I think I'll just read everyone in Muppet voices today. And essentially, Edgar comes in too. Oh my God. All right, I'll try it. Edgar comes to Kathy and is like, you need to decide, him or me. And Kathy's like, I don't want to decide right now, and you're being an asshole. And Edgar's like, gaslit. And he's like, okay. And basically nothing has been solved or established, and everyone is just really mad at each other. So let's see where this next chapter will take us. Excuse me. Excuse me again. It's my shake. It's a coffee shake from Shake Shack. It's quite tasty. Okie dokie artichokes. Wuthering Heights, Volume 1, Chapter 11. While Miss Linton moped about the park and garden, always silent and almost always in tears, and her brother shut himself up among books that he never opened, wearying, I guessed, with the continual vague expectation that Catherine, Repenting her conduct would come of her own accord to ask pardon and seek a reconciliation, and she fasted pertinaciously, I think so, under the idea, probably, that at every meal Edgar was ready to choke her for her absence, and pride alone held him from running to cast himself at her feet. I went about my household duties convinced that the Grange had but one sensible soul in its walls, and that lodged in my body. I wasted no condolences on Miss, nor any expostulations on my mistress, nor did I pay attention to the sighs of my master, who yearned to hear his lady's name, since he might not hear her voice. I determined that they should come about as they pleased for me, and though it was a tiresomely slow process, I began to rejoice at length in a faint dawn of its progress, as I thought at first. I just realized the sun has changed its position and now it's hot, so I have to change my shades. Do you guys like my outfit today? I like my outfit today. It's very fun. It's a skirt and it's a big ass jean thing. Maybe I'll just look like this now. Okay, thank you. This was all a ploy to get you to compliment me on my outfit. Okay, where was I? Denim. Okay. Mrs. Linton, on the third day, unbarred her door, and having finished the water in her pitcher and decanter, desired a renewed supply and a basin of gruel, for she believed she was dying. That I set down as a speech meant for Edgar's ears. I believed no such thing, so I kept it to myself, and brought her some tea and dry toast. She ate and drank eagerly, and sank back on her pillow again, clenching her hands and groaning. "Oh, I will die," she exclaimed, "since no one cares anything about me. I wish I had not taken that." That's me, whenever no one's paying attention to me for like 15 minutes. I go and bug my dad. Then a good while after, I heard her murmur, "No, I'll not die. He'll be glad. He does not love me at all. He would never miss me." "Did you want anything, ma'am?" I inquired, still preserving my external composure, in spite of her ghastly countenance and strange exaggerated manner. What is that apathetic being doing?" she demanded, pushing the thick and tangled locks from her wasted face. "Has he fallen into a lethargy, or is he dead?" "Neither," I replied, "if you mean Mr. Linton. He's tolerably well, I think, though his studies occupy him rather more than they ought. He is continually among his books, since he has no other society. Me.R.N." I should not have spoken so, if he had known her true condition, but I could not get rid of the notion that she acted a part of her disorder. "Among his books," she cried, confounded. "And I dying? I on the brink of the grave?" Sorry. "My God, does he know how I'm altered?" continued she, staring at her reflection in a mirror, hanging against the opposite wall. "Is that Catherine Linton? He imagines me in a pet, in a play, perhaps. Cannot you inform him that it is a frightful earnest? Nellie, if it be not too late, as soon as I learn how he feels, I'll choose between the two. Either to starve at once, that would be no punishment unless he had a heart, or to recover and leave the country. Are you speaking the truth about him now? Take care. Is he actually so indifferent for my life?" "Why, ma'am," I answered, "the master has no idea of your being deranged, and of course he does not fear that you will let yourself die of hunger." "You think not? Cannot you tell him I will?" she returned. "Persuade him. Speak of your own mind. Say you are certain I will." "No, you forget, Mrs. Linton," I suggested, "that you have eaten some food with a relish this evening, and tomorrow you will perceive its good effects. You have had one piece of toast. Surely that will cure you." Your wife is starving herself. Do you want to do anything? "If I were only sure it would kill him," she interrupted, "I'd kill myself directly. Good Lord, sorry. These 3 awful nights, I've never closed my lids. And oh, I've been tormented. I've been haunted, Nellie. I began to fancy you don't like me. How strange." It's totally true, though. "I thought, though everybody hated and despised each other, they could not avoid loving me. And they have all turned to enemies in a few hours. They have, I'm positive, the people here. How dreary to meet death surrounded by their cold faces. Isabella, terrified and repelled, afraid to enter the room. It would be so dreadful to watch Catherine go. And Edgar standing solemnly by to see it over, then offering prayers of thanks to God for restoring peace to his house, and going back to his books. What in the name of all that feels he has to do with books when I am dying? She could not bear the notion which I had put into her head of Mr. Linton's philosophical resignation. Tossing about, she increased her feverish bewilderment to madness, and tore the pillow with her teeth, then raised herself up, all burning, desired that I would open the window. We were in the middle of winter, the wind blew strong from the northeast, and I objected. Both expressions flitting over her face and the changes of her moods began to alarm me terribly, and I brought to my recollection her former illness, and the doctor's injunction that she should not be crossed. A minute previously she was violent, now supported on one arm, and not noticing my refusal to obey her. She seemed to find childish diversion in pulling the feathers from the rents she had just made, and ranging them on the sheet according to their different species. Her mind had strayed to other associations. That's a turkey's, she murmured to herself. And this is a wild duck's, and this is a pigeon's. They put pigeon's feathers in the pillows. No wonder I couldn't die. Let me take care to throw it on the floor when I lie down. Here's a moorcock's, and this, I should know it among 1,000, is a lapwing's, bonny bird, wheeling over our heads in the middle of the moor. It wanted to get it to its nest, for the clouds touched the swells, and it felt rain coming. This feather was picked up from the heath. The bird was not shot. We saw its nest in the winter full of little skeletons. Heathcliff set a trap over it, and the old ones dare not come. I made him promise he'd never shoot a lapwing after that, and he didn't. Yes, here are more. Did he shoot my lapwings, Nellie? Are they red, any of them? Let me look. Give over with that baby work, I interrupted, dragging the pillow away and turning the holes towards the mattress, for she was removing its contents by handfuls. Lie down and shut your eyes, you're wandering. There's a mess. The down is flying about like snow. I went here and there collecting it. I see in you, Nellie, she continued dreamily, an aged woman. You have gray hair and bent shoulders. This bed is the fairy cave under Penistone Crag, and you are gathering elf bolts to hurt our heifers, pretending while I am near that they are only locks of wool. That's why you'll come to 50 years hence. I know you are not so now. I'm not wandering, you're mistaken. Or else I should believe you really were that withered hag, and I should think that I was under Penistone Crag. And I'm conscious it's night, and there are 2 candles on the table making the black press shine like jet. The black press? Where is that? I asked. You're talking in your sleep. Hold on. Delicious. I silenced it. It's against the wall as it always is, she replied. It does appear odd. I see a face in it. There's no press in the room, and never was, said I, resuming my seat and looping up the curtain that I might watch her. Don't you see that face? She inquired, gazing earnestly at the mirror. And say what I could, I was incapable of making her comprehend it to be her own. So I rose and covered it with a shawl. And it's behind there still, she pursued anxiously, and it stirred. Who is it? I hope it will not come out when you are alone. Oh, Nellie, the room is haunted. I'm afraid of being alone. I took her hand in mine and bid her be composed, for a succession of shudders convulsed her frame, and she would keep straining her gaze towards the glass. There's nobody here, I insisted. It was yourself, Mrs. Linton. You knew it was a while since. Myself, she gasped, and the clock is striking 12. It's true, then. That's dreadful. Her fingers clutched the clothes and gathered them over her eyes. I attempted to steal to the door with the intention of calling her husband, but I was summoned back by a piercing shriek. The shawl had dropped from the frame. Why, what is the matter? I cried. Who is cowed now? Wake up! That is the glass, the mirror, Mrs. Linton, and you see yourself in it, and there I am too by your side. Trembling and bewildered, she held me fast, but the horror gradually passed from her countenance. Its paleness gave place to a glow of shame. Oh dear, I thought I was at home. she sighed. "I thought I was lying in my chamber at Wuthering Heights. Because I'm weak, my brain got confused, and I screamed unconsciously. Don't say anything, but stay with me. I dread sleeping, my dreams appall me." "Sound sleep would do you good, ma'am," I answered, "and I hope this suffering will prevent your trying starving again." "Oh, if I were but in my own bed in the old house," she went on, bitterly wringing her hands, "and that wind surrounding in the firs by the lattice. Do let me feel it. It comes straight down the moor. Do let me have one breath." To pacify her, I held the casement ajar a few seconds. Oh. A cold blast rushed through. I closed it and returned to my post. She lay still now, her face bathed in tears. Exhaustion of the body had entirely subdued her spirit. Our fiery Catherine was no better than a wailing child. "How long is it since I shut myself in here?" she asked, suddenly reviving. "It was Monday evening," I replied, "and this is Thursday night, or rather Friday morning at present." "What, of the same week?" she exclaimed. "Only that brief a time?" "Long enough to live on nothing but cold water and ill temper," I observed. "Well, it seems a weary number of hours," she muttered doubtfully. "It must be more. I remembered being in the parlor after they had quarreled, and Edgar being cruelly provoking, and me running into this room desperate. As soon as I ever barred the door, utter blackness overwhelmed me, and I fell on the floor. I couldn't explain to Edgar how certain I felt of having a fit or going raging mad if he persisted in teasing me. I had no command of tongue or brain, and he did not guess my agony, perhaps. It barely left me sense to try to escape from him and his voice. Before I recovered sufficiently to see and hear, it began to be dawn, and Nellie, I'll tell you what I thought and what has kept recurring and recurring till I feared for my reason. I thought as I lay there with my head against that table leg, and my eye dimly discerning the grey square of the window, that I was enclosed in the oak-panelled bed at home, and my heart ached with some great grief which, just waking, I could not recollect. I pondered and worried myself to discover what it could be, and most strangely, the whole last 7 years of my life grew a blank. I did not recall that they had been at all. I was a child, my father was just buried, and my misery arose from the separation that Hindley had ordered between me and Heathcliff. I was laid alone for the first time, and rousing from a dismal doze after a night of weeping, I lifted my hand to push the panels aside. It struck the tabletop. I swept it along the carpet, and then memory burst in. My late anguish was swallowed in a paroxysm of despair. I cannot say why I felt so wildly wretched. It must have been temporary derangement, for there is scarcely a cause. But supposing at 12 years old I had been wrenched from the heights, and every early association, and my all in all, as Heathcliff was at the time, and been converted at a stroke into Mrs. Linton, the lady of Thrushcross Grange, and the wife of a stranger, an exile, and outcast thenceforth from what had been my world. You may fancy a glimpse of the abyss where I grovelled. Shake your head as you will, Nellie, but you have helped to unsettle me. You should have spoken to Edgar, indeed you should, and compelled him to leave me quiet. Oh, I am burning. I wish I were out of doors. I wish I were a girl again, savage and hardy and free, and laughing at injuries, not maddening under them. Why am I so changed? Why does my blood rush into a hell of tumult at a few words? I'm sure I should be myself were I once among the heather on those hills. Open the window again wide, fasten it open. Quick, why don't you move? Because I won't give you your death of a cold, I answered. You won't give me a chance of life, you mean, she said sullenly. However, I'm not helpless yet. I'll open it myself. And sliding from the bed before I could hinder her, she crossed the room, walking very uncertainly, threw it back, and bent out, careless of the frosty air that cut about her shoulders, as keen as a knife. I entreated and finally attempted to force her to retire, but I soon found her delirious strength much surpassed mine. She was delirious, I became convinced by her subsequent actions and ravings. There was no moon, and everything beneath lay in misty darkness. Not a light gleamed from any house, far or near. All had been extinguished long ago, and those at Wuthering Heights were never visible. Still she asserted she caught their shining. "Look," she cried eagerly, "there's my room, with a candle in it, and the trees swaying before it. And the other candle is in Joseph's garret. Joseph sits up late, doesn't he? He's waiting till I come home that he may lock the gate." "Well, he'll wait a while yet. It's a rough journey and a sad heart to travel it, and we must pass by Gimmerton Kirk to go that journey. We've braved its ghosts often together and dared each other to stand among the graves and ask them to come. Heathcliff, I dare you now. Will you venture? If you do, I'll keep you. I'll not lie there by myself. They may bury me 12 feet deep." I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. "They may bury me 12 feet deep and throw the church down over me, but I won't rest till you are with me. I never will." Oh no. She paused and then resumed with a strange smile. "He's considering. He'd rather I'd come to him. Find a way then, not through that kirkyard. You were slow. Be content you always followed me." Perceiving it vain to argue about her against her insanity, I was planning how I could reach something to wrap about her without quitting my hold of herself, for I could not trust her alone by the gaping lattice, when to my consternation I heard the rattle of the door handle, and Mr. Linton entered. He had only then come from the library, and in passing through the lobby had noticed our talking, and been attracted by curiosity or fear to examine what it signified at that late hour. "Oh, sir," I cried, checking the exclamation, risen to his lips at the sight which met him, and the bleak atmosphere of the chamber. "My poor mistress is ill, and she quite masters me. I cannot manage her at all. Pray come and persuade her to go to bed. Forget your anger. She's hard to guide any way but her own." "Catherine ill?" he said, hastening to us. "Shut the window, Ellen. Catherine, why?" He was silent. The haggardness of Mrs. Linton's appearance smote him speechless, and he could only glance from her to me in horrified astonishment. "She's been fretting here," I continued, "and eating scarcely anything and never complaining. She would admit none of us till this evening, and so we couldn't inform you of her state, as we were not aware of it ourselves, but it is nothing." "Well, I don't feel like it's nothing, Nellie. Excuse me. This woman hasn't slept in who knows how long, hasn't eaten anything in who knows how long. This coffee is gonna zazz me." I felt I uttered my explanations awkwardly. The master frowned. "It is nothing, is it, Ellen Dean?" he said sternly. "You shall account more clearly for keeping me ignorant of this." And he took his wife in his arms and looked at her with anguish. At first she gave him no glance of recognition. He was invisible to her abstracted gaze. The delirium was not fixed, however, and having weaned her eyes from contemplating the outer darkness, by degrees, she centered her attention on him and discovered who it was that held her. "Ah, you are come, are you, Edgar Linton?" she said with angry animation. Whoops. Okay, let me go back. "Ah, you are come, are you, Edgar Linton?" she said with angry animation. "You are one of those things that are ever found when least wanted, and when you are wanted, never. I suppose we shall have plenty of lamentations now. I see we shall. But they can't keep me from my narrow home out yonder, my resting place where I'm bound before spring is over. There it is, not among the Lintons, mind, under the chapel roof, but in the open air with a headstone, and you may please yourself whether you go to them or come to me." Weird. "Catherine, what have you done?" commenced the master. Oh boy, we're in for a long one today. "Am I nothing to you any more? Do you love that wretch, Heath?" "Hush!" cried Mrs. Linton. "Hush this moment. You mention that name, and I end the matter instantly by a spring from the window. What you touch at present you may have, but my soul will be on that hilltop before you lay hands on me again. I don't want you, Edgar. I'm past wanting you. Return to your books. I'm glad you possess a consolation, for all you had in me is gone." "Her mind wanders, sir," I interposed. "She has been talking nonsense the whole evening, but let her have quiet and proper attendance, and she'll rally.
Hereafter we must be cautious how we vex her. I desire no further advice from you, answered Mr. Linton. You knew your mistress's nature, and you encouraged me to harass her. And not to give me one hint of how she has been these 3 days. It was heartless. Months of sickness could not cause such a change. I began to defend myself, thinking it too bad to be blamed for another's wicked waywardness. That's good. I knew Mrs. Linton's nature to be headstrong and domineering, cried I, but I didn't know that you wished to foster her fierce temper. I didn't know that, to humor her, I should wink at Mr. Heathcliff. I performed the duty of a faithful servant in telling you, and I have got a faithful servant's wages. Well, it will teach me to be careful next time. Next time you may gather intelligence for yourself. Next time you bring a tale to me, you shall quit my service, Ellen Dean, he replied. You'd rather hear nothing about it, I suppose, then, Mr. Linton, said I. Heathcliff has your permission to come according to Miss, and to drop in at every opportunity your absence offers, on purpose to poison the mistress against you. Confused as Catherine was, her wits were alert at applying our conversation. Ah, Nellie has played traitor, she exclaimed passionately. Nellie is my hidden enemy. You witch! So you do seek elf bolts to hurt us. Let me go, and I'll make her rue. I'll make her howl a recantation. A manic fury kindled under her brows. She struggled desperately to disengage herself from Linton's arms. I felt no inclination to tarry the event, and resolving to seek medical aid on my own responsibility, I quitted the chamber. In passing the garden to reach the road, at a place where the bridle... I think it's bridle. Brittle? I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'll just say it. At a place where a bridle hook is driven into the wall, I saw something white moving irregularly, evidently by another agent than the wind. Notwithstanding my hurry, I stayed to examine it, lest ever after I should have the conviction impressed on my imagination that it was a creature of the other world. My surprise and perplexity were great to discover, by touch more than vision. What? Miss Isabella Springer, suspended to a handkerchief, and nearly at its last gasp. Someone try to hang her dog? I quickly released the animal and lifted it into the garden. I had seen it follow its mistress upstairs when she went to bed, and wondered how much it could have got out there, and what mischievous person had treated it so. While untying the knot round the hook, it seemed to me that I repeatedly caught the beat of horses' feet galloping at some distance. But there were such a number of things to occupy my reflections that I hardly gave the circumstance a thought, though it was a strange sound in that place at 2 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Kenneth was fortunately just issuing from his house to see a patient in the village, as I came up in the street, and my account of Catherine Linton's malady induced him to accompany me back immediately. He was a plain, rough man, and he made no scruple to speak his doubts of her surviving this second attack. Kenneth is like, every time somebody sneezes, he's like, you should say your goodbyes. Unless she were more submissive to his directions than she had shown herself before. Nellie Dean, he said, I can't help fancying there's an extra cause for this. What has there been to do at the Grange? We've odd reports up here. A stout, hearty lass like Catherine does not fall ill for a trifle, and that sort of people should not either. It's hard work bringing them through fevers and such things. How did it begin? The master will inform you, I answered, but you are acquainted with the Earnshaw's violent dispositions, and Mrs. Linton caps them all. I may say this, it commenced in a quarrel. She was struck during a tempest of passion with a kind of fit. That's her account, at least, for she flew off at the height of it, and locked herself up. Afterwards, she refused to eat, and now she alternately raves and remains in half dream, knowing those about her, and having her mind filled with all sorts of strange ideas and illusions. Mr. Linton will be sorry? I don't know what that means, Kenneth, observed Kenneth interrogatively. Sorry? He'll break his heart should anything happen, I replied. Don't alarm him more than necessary. Well, I told him to beware, said my companion, and he must bide the consequences of neglecting my warning. Hasn't he been— oh shit, sorry, that's Kenneth. Well, I told him to beware, said my companion, and he must bide the consequences of neglecting my warning. Hasn't he been thick with Mr. Heathcliff lately? Heathcliff frequently visits at the Grange, answered I, though more on the strength of the mistress having known him when a boy, than because the master likes his company. At present he's discharged from the trouble of calling, owing to some presumptuous aspirations after Miss Linton, which he manifested. I hardly think he'll be taken in again. And does Miss Linton turn a cold shoulder on him? Was the doctor's next question. I am not in her confidence, returned I, reluctant to continue the subject. No, she's a sly one, he remarked, shaking his head. She keeps her own counsel, but she's a right little fool. I have it from good authority that last night, and a pretty night it was, she and Heathcliff were walking in the plantation at the back of your house above 2 hours, and he pressed her not to go in again, but just mount his horse and away with him. My informant said she could only put him off by pledging her word of honor to be prepared on the first meeting after that. When it was to be, he didn't hear, but you urged Mr. Linton to look sharp. This nude, this nude. It only gets worse. The real phrase is, this news filled me with fresh fears. But I suppose this nude filled me with fresh fears would also be accurate. Anyways, don't send unsolicited nudes. We don't want them. Okay. This news filled me with fresh fears. I outstripped Kenneth and ran most of the way back. The little dog was yelping in the garden yet. I spared a minute to open the gate for it, but instead of going into the house, it coursed up and down, snuffing the grass, and would have escaped to the road had I not seized and conveyed it in with me. On ascending to Isabella's room, my suspicions were confirmed. It was empty. Had I been a few hours sooner, Mrs. Linton's illness might have arrested her rash step. But what could be done now? Wait, hold on. Oh, shit. Okay, we're talking about Isabella. Oh, Heathcliff. But what could be done now? There was a bare possibility of overtaking them if pursued instantly. I could not pursue them, however, and I dare not rouse the family and fill the place with confusion. Still less unfold the business to my master, absorbed as he was in his present calamity, and having no heart to spare for a second grief. I saw nothing for it but to hold my tongue and suffer matters to take their course. And Kenneth being arrived, I went with a bad composed countenance to announce him. Also, what's-his-face was just like, don't ever tell me anything again. So, like, you immediately paid for that, Edgar. I saw nothing for it, but oh wait, no, I already did that. Catherine lay in a troubled sleep. Her husband had succeeded in soothing the access of frenzy. He now hung over her pillow, watching every shade and every change of her painfully expressive features. The doctor, on examining the case for himself, spoke hopefully to him of its having a favorable termination, if we could only preserve around her perfect and constant tranquillity. To me, he signified the threatening danger was not so much death as permanent alienation of intellect. I did not close my eyes that night, nor did Mr. Linton. Indeed, we never went to bed, and the servants were all up long before the usual hour, moving through the house with stealthy tread and exchanging whispers as they encountered each other in their vocations. Every one was active but Miss Isabella, and they began to remark how sound she slept. Her brother too asked if she had risen and seemed impatient for her presence, and hurt that she showed so little anxiety for her sister-in-law. I trembled lest he should send me to call her, but I was spared the pain of being the first proclamant of her flight. One of the maids, a thoughtless girl who had been on an early errand to Gimmerton, came panting upstairs, open-mouthed, and dashed into the chamber crying, oh dear, what must we have next? Master, our young lady. Hold your noise, I cried hastily, engaged at her clamorous manner. Speak lower, Mary. What is the matter? matter?" said Mr. Linton. "What ails your young lady?" "She's gone, she's gone. Young Heathcliff's run off with her," gasped the girl. "That is not true," exclaimed Linton, rising in agitation. "It cannot be. How has this idea entered your head? Ellen Dean, go and seek her. It is incredible. It cannot be." As he spoke, he took the servant to the door and then repeated his demand to know her reasons for such an assertion. "Why, I met on the road a lad that fetches milk here," she stammered, "and he asked whether we weren't in trouble at the Grange. I thought he meant for Mrs. Sickness, so I answered yes. Then he says there's somebody gone after him, I guess. I stared. He saw I knew not about it, and he told how a gentleman and a lady had stopped to have a horse's shoe fastened at the blacksmith's shop, 2 miles out of Gimmerton, not very long after midnight, and how the blacksmith's lass got up to spy who they were, and she knew them both directly. And she noticed the man, Heathcliff it was, she felt certain. Nobody could mistake him besides. Put a sovereign in her father's hand for payment. The lady had a cloak about her face, but having desired a sup of water while she drank, it fell back, and she drew her very plain. Heathcliff held both bridles as they rode on, and they set their faces from the village, and went as fast as the rough roads would let them. The lass said nothing to her father, but she told it all over Gimmerton this morning. I ran and peeped, for the form's sake, into Isabella's room, confirming when I returned the servant's statement. Mr. Linton had resumed his seat by the bed. On my re-entrance, he raised his eyes, read the meaning of my blank aspect, and dropped them without giving an order or uttering a word. "Are we to try any measures for overtaking and bringing her back?" I inquired. "How should we do?" "She went of her own accord," answered the master. "She had a right to go if she pleased. Trouble me no more about her. Hereafter she is only my sister in name, not because I disown her, but because she has disowned me." And that was all he said on the subject. He did not make a single inquiry further or mention her in any way, except for directing me to send what property she had in the house to her fresh home, wherever it was when I knew it. Oh, baby, baby, how were you supposed to know? That's the end of that chapter. Oh. Rough times at Thrushcross Grange instead of fast times at Ridgemont High. Oh, excuse me. What a like deeply, things are just not going well for people. Poor Kathy is like, I think she's just delirious from lack of sleep. That's my take on it. I think it's so interesting. Like, I'm sure someone much smarter than me and much more well-read has done a cross between Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights about how Jane Eyre is about a sane woman discovering an insane woman, quote unquote. And Wuthering Heights is about like a quote unquote, a woman that would be considered insane. Wuthering. I just think that's a really interesting cross. Like, it would be fun to like cross. It's right, Jane Eyre? That's what you guys want me to say? That's what I'm being gaslit into thinking is correct. I talked to my parents about it, and they both think it's Jane Eyre, but I trust you more, to be honest. Oh my God. Wait, now you're saying it's Jane Eyre? That's what I'm getting a lot of conflicting information, and I don't like it. Okay. Well, that's it for today. I really like this book. I don't like the like horrific abuse and stuff like that. It's awful. It's extremely dark. But I really love this air of like hauntedness that it has, even though they're just haunted by each other, essentially. I love that. It's just like a human haunting of ideas, and I love it. I really, really like that concept of like
like I might write a screenplay version of this. Because like if you had like Nellie like seeing the dog tied up in the tree, which is extremely weird, but like she thinks it's something otherworldly. So if you were like doing a tracking shot with Nellie as she walked and you pass this window and you see something extremely weird in the window, or like it's like a floating body sort of thing or something, and then Nellie sees that too and she pans back and it's just like the dog or something, like that would be so cool. A tree with eyes. Yeah, or just something that like something unsettling. There's like definitely something unsettling in the first when you go forward. And like you could only, I don't know. I'm already planning for its release. Coming 2021, Sophie starring in Wuthering Heights. I don't know. I wonder, it's so surprising to me that there isn't already like a great adaptation. Let's look now. Who's gonna haunt me? I'm saving, every day I have the urge to sing the song, but I'm saving it up. I'm saving up that song for you all. So if we don't hit the actual lines, I'll sing it at the end for you. I'll just do one great rousing chorus of Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush. Ooh, my love, my darling, I've hungered for so long. Okay, well, I think. Uh-oh. So this one is interesting. It came out in oh my God, we're watching this one. We're watching this one. Okay, it's directed by Andrea Arnold, who is an incredible female director. She is so cool. She did the most recent season of Big Little Lies. I love her. I love All Woman. What else did she do? Why is that? I know I was talking about her earlier. She did something else, didn't she? She did something called Fish Tank. Oh, that's why Fish Tank. It was just a different poster. Fish Tank is something on the Criterion Channel, which I'll watch. But she did a Wuthering Heights in 2011. I have no idea if we're going to be able to watch it though. That is Kathy as a white woman and Heathcliff as a black man. Which I haven't heard anyone say anything about it. But that sounds like a really interesting adaptation from a director who I trust and like, even though she's also a white lady. But I'm really intrigued. I'm real intrigued, y'all. Ooh, I hope she delivers the goods. This is really exciting. I hope she delivers the goods. All right. Okay, I'm so pumped. I've never been more pumped. And I've been so let down before. But maybe I don't have to write the screenplay. But also I still kind of want to. But also this Andrea Arnold version like feels so right. It feels so right. Okay, guys, I'm just like so pumped right now. A woman director. I'm so excited. Okay, I'm gonna hang up after that extreme bout of joy that I just experienced. I will see you tomorrow. I have a film recommendation for you today. I haven't watched it yet, so it might be, I don't know. I'm going to watch the film But I'm a Cheerleader tonight, which is a landmark of queer cinema that was made in the 90s and is still ahead of its time. If you want to watch another film that was way ahead of its time, you can watch Outrage, which is a film that was directed by a woman in 1950. It was directed by a female director named Ida Lupino, and it's about like a like what happens to this victim of rape. And it's just like, I've never seen a film like it, and it was made in 1950 by a woman. So check those. Those are my 2 film recommendations for today. That I'm a Cheerleader and Outraged by Ida Pino. I'm really going to leave now because I've held you for far too long. I hope you are all well. I hope you enjoyed my cat in the thumbnail of today. And I'm really excited to see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday, so I'll be here at 1. And I love and miss you all. Okay, bye.